Yes. So Bill is probably working on getting the YouTube stream up live. I think that's happening now. So for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of an NWSOFA call before, we are streaming this live to YouTube. So if you go to either YouTube and search for NWSOFA, or if you go to nwsofa.org and you look for the videos, you can find this stream right now. It'll show up under the live section in the videos. And just as a reminder, if you would prefer not to have your face in the video, just go ahead and turn off your camera when you speak. But if you don't mind, we would otherwise love to see your faces because you're a good-looking crew and we're happy to have you. So that's what's going on. And I think with that, we might be ready to get going.
Yes, ma'am. And
Okay.
yes, welcome back, everyone, or welcome if this is your first Vision Forward. We are so happy that you have decided to spend an hour or maybe a little longer with us here this evening. Um, I am very, very glad that you are here with us tonight. Before we dive in, let's take a deep breath together. And if you have been with us in the soup, you know I'm a big fan of breathing. So let's just take a deep breath in and exhale. All right. And let the busyness of the day just fall away and arrive here fully present, fully open. Because Vision Forward is not just another meeting. This is our space to imagine what is possible, to test our ideas, and to practice the work of building power. Up until now, we have talked about our why, our vision, our values, our shared sense of purpose. Tonight, we turn toward the how. The word for tonight is strategy. Strategy is what carries our vision from imagination into reality. When I say strategy, I don't mean just a to-do list or a stack of plans. Strategy is the art of connection. It connects our resources, our people, and our timing to the goals we want to achieve. Think of it this way. Tactics are the individual steps, the marches, the meetings, the letters, the strikes, right? Strategy is the path that tells us which steps matter the most. Without strategy, even powerful actions can feel scattered. With strategy, even small actions can be transformational. So here's a question for you. When you hear the word strategy, what comes to your mind? Drop it in the chat, please. Just a few words. What comes to your mind when you hear the word strategy? A plan with goals. That's what I see. I see a plan, a path forward, longer term vision, hope, war. Okay. Action oriented, thinking ahead. That's great. Great. Thank you. All right. So movements in history remind us how critical strategy is. Take the Montgomery bus boycott. It wasn't just a protest, right? It was a year-long carefully organized economic strategy. They knew exactly where to put pressure and how to sustain it with carpools and mutual support. Or the labor strikes of the early 20th century. Workers didn't just walk out at random. They timed their actions to maximize leverage, to create conditions where their absence shifted the balance of power. Even when resources were small, strategy multiplied them. What's a moment in history, or even in your own life, where you've seen strategy make the difference between failure and success? Put an example in the chat for us. A football game. Heck yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Anybody else? A trial. Yes. The civil rights movement, of course. A job transition. Those are excellent examples of how strategy put moon landing. Oh my gosh, that is a perfect example of how strategy got us out of a very, very bad, a tight situation. All right, so why this focus here and now? You might be wondering why, or you might not. You might know exactly why. Because we're up against forces that thrive on chaos, distraction, and division, right? They want us to be reactive, constantly chasing the latest crisis. But strategy keeps us centered. Strategy helps us say, this is our direction. This is what matters. This is where we will put our energy. Strategy gives us clarity when things get overwhelming. It allows us to resist being pulled into someone else's agenda. It gives us resilience and it keeps us aligned with our deepest values. So I want you to consider, what difference would it make for us, for our movement, if we had not just vision, but a shared strategy that guided our actions? And if we all followed it, if it was coming from the top, from leadership. As we move into tonight's session, I invite you to bring two things with you. First, your sense of possibility. What could we achieve if we align and act with purpose? Second, your practical wisdom. Each and every one of you carries knowledge of your community, your networks, and your lived experience. And that makes our strategy stronger. What we are building tonight is not a rigid blueprint. It is a living and moving map, a guide that we can adapt and refine as the terrain shifts beneath us. So let's take our vision and give it a shape. Let's give it direction. Let's turn imagination into impact, y'all. Because strategy isn't just something movements do. Strategy is how movements win. So let's get started. Tonight, we will be using co-facilitators. I am Cecilia. We will be having Chris, Joe W., Rebecca, Melissa, Adrian, Boot Money, but most importantly, none of this works without all of you. So now, Dr. Chris, on to you. Unmute, please.
Mute myself. Okay. Unmute. Okay. All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris. So welcome. This is now our fourth session of Vision Forward. I'm going to give you an overview of the overall initiative because I know for some of you, I'm not recognizing your name, so I'm assuming it's your first night. But not to worry. Rebecca is going to lead us all through what you've missed. So we'll be able to connect to that. But I wanted to start just with giving everybody a little bit of a background as to how this project started and to clarify who some of the facilitators are. So we are members of the Northwest Suburbs Organizing for Action Indivisible. We're regular attendees at the coffee and conversation session that Bill Davis and team host every morning, actually at 9 o'clock Central. And on one of those meetings in late May, we were having a conversation, kind of an after hours conversation, which has become a tradition where some people just hang on the call to talk about things a little more in depth. And some of the group members expressed some frustration with kind of just where we were. You know, the fact that we had lost the election, that there was a common concern that our messaging was off, that we were not communicating who we were as a party and what we stood for, and felt that the other side was doing a better job with messaging. And one of the things that was expressed in that conversation was just the need for clearer and more compelling ways to communicate what we stood for and what our vision was. But most importantly, that messaging was done in a very conversational, down to earth, talk like real people way. Okay. And for those of you who have been following a lot of our leaders right now, some of who potentially could be running for office, you'll see that as a theme. So whether you're talking about Pete Buttigieg or Tim Walz or Elise Slotkin, they're all talking about the need to have a compelling message that that is simple and we speak like everyday people. So the initial focus of the project was actually on messaging. And as the project developed, like many of our projects with Indivisible, it kind of grew a little bit in scope because we had a team member, Joe, you see him on the call, introduced a document that he was using to communicate some of the same ideas, but his audience was his representatives, his congressional representatives. So he created a document. He shared it with us and said, you know, I think this probably fits into this project. And we agreed. We posted it on Discord, and many of you who are on the call tonight have been providing ongoing input into that document that that Joe will talk us through a little bit tonight. So so the scope of the project, like I said, changed a little bit from a messaging focus to the need to come up with a strategy and a framework for what we stood for as a party. So with that being said, we kind of broke the overall big project into 5 phases. So, and just to kind of recap some of those fates. So we started just brainstorming our pro-democracy values. And then this was my favorite session. And then we basically just put on our imagination caps and imagine an America that does not yet exist, but that we dream one day will exist. And so that's where just anything was on the table. And so we came up with a vision document. And then we moved on to coming up with a policy framework, and that was last session that supported us being able to achieve that session. And then just to catch you up to where we are now, tonight we're actually going to talk about strategy and how we connect that vision and our policy to, you know, really getting things done and taking action. And then our last phase will be, you know, kind of where we started, you know, that our intention to come up with clear, compelling messaging that where we can communicate our dream and our vision and why people would want to vote for the Democratic Party and what we stand for. So what I'm going to do now is I will turn it over to Rebecca, and she is going to just do a quick walkthrough of all the things that we did for in the first couple of sessions, just so you're grounded in that, and kind of we can take you along the journey and catch you up if you weren't there. So as I mentioned, the focus for today is going to be on what strategies or tactics we can use to position our movement as both a strong opposition to the current regime, but more importantly, to the clear and preferable alternative heading into the midterms. So we're gonna we'll discuss things, and kind of give you an overview. We'll brainstorm, and we will go into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back together to debrief those things that we talked about in our breakout room. And we'll end tonight's session with just kind of talking about the next step and the way ahead. So with that, I will turn it over to Rebecca for the recap.
Thanks, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, we have this 5-phase project, and we are on step 4 right now, which is strategy. So in a moment, I'm going to recap the previous 3 sessions, which covered values, our vision, and then the platform and policy. And I'll try and be pretty speedy. The majority of our time tonight is going to be spent on strategy, as I mentioned. And in this, we're going to be working to answer a couple of questions. Who do we need to influence? What actions do we take so that we can be a strong opposition force against authoritarianism and the status quo, which really isn't working for everybody? And what actions are needed to position Dems as the right choice in the upcoming election? And then in our next session, in 2 weeks, we will be wrapping this all up into a beautiful bow with some messaging strategies. So I'm very excited for that. And I think you all are going to enjoy tonight as well. So before we get to the strategy talk, just to quickly recap the last 3 sessions. So this was our first meeting, reflecting on our shared values. So all the things in the little bubbles, those were our values that arose in our discussions. And that was kind of messy. It was all over the place. And so we sort of organized them into some themes. And that led us to sort of a 4-part framework, 4 core beliefs. And that's what's showing up in each of these quadrants. And so we ended up with opportunity to thrive, which is around the idea of creating conditions where everyone can succeed and flourish, which is super important when you think about, what do they call it? Kitchen table issues, pocketbook issues, things like that. Freedom and democracy. This is really important right now because we're facing this authoritarian threat. Some of our democratic norms are being undermined, and we really need to stand up for that. Fairness and equity is really just understanding that we are a diverse society, and that's a good thing, and we need to honor that. And lastly, a secure and sustainable future, which is about, we need to protect our planet, and we need to protect our future as a country. And not just for the moment, but in the long term as well. So it really focuses on dignity, safety, and sustainability. So that's kind of where we ended up with our values. And from there, we took those 4 core beliefs and we broke it out into kind of building blocks, where each element of the vision helps us think and plan in each core area. So just for an example here, under opportunity to thrive, part of our vision is that everyone has access to a lifetime of affordable, high quality education. Sounds great, right? That's the brownie. So if you think back to our last session, the brownie, the thing that we want to happen, um, well, in order to get a brownie, you need all of your ingredients and need to follow the steps to make the brownie. So the brownie is the vision, the future that we all want to make happen. That's the irresistible end goal. And the policy platform, that's all the ingredients and the steps that you have to follow in order to make this a reality. So, following our previous example, where everyone has access to a lifetime of education, affordable, high quality education, well, the way to make that vision a reality is to fully fund public schools, including pre-K and early learning, as well as access to affordable advanced education. So that's just an example of how all of these pieces kind of came together in the past 3 sessions. And so I'm not gonna, go through all of this. This is available in our Discord, and we're gonna make sure that Bill sends it out to everybody that signed up for this. But you can see that we've covered all the elements of the vision, all of the elements of our values. One thing that you might notice is that a lot of these policies seem kind of broad, and that's intentional. So, in this example, around healthcare, guarantee universal healthcare. Well, there's multiple ways to do that. You may have heard some people talk about Medicare for all. You may have heard others talk about single payer. What we're doing right now is leaving it broad because ultimately there's multiple ways to make a brownie. There are different recipes, and it's we're not trying to nail it down to the nth degree. What we're trying to say is this is what we want. This is how we think people can go and do it. And all specific plans, pluses and minuses can go be debated in, the public discourse. So we left these things intentionally broad. So that catches everyone up to where we are now. And at this point, we're ready to transition to talk about strategy. And I'm very excited for this. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe.
Hi, I'm Joe, and really excited to be here with you all tonight. One of the first things that we need to acknowledge going into this is that, we don't hold the majority. And so there are limits to what we can do in terms of enacting laws, introducing changes. And so, what we need to do is think about how do we start influencing. There was a mention before about winning the next election. Well, we need to lay out a reason for people to vote for us. So I firmly believe that clearly stating our positive vision and the agenda is the first thing we need to do and define the actions that we get there. That also allows us to position ourselves as an opposition party. We can't, it's not enough to oppose. We want to oppose because we believe in things and then take action based on that. So as we go into this, I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we're trying to frame this and how that leads into the breakout. So let me get into that. So the first thing is we identified 4 tenets, or call them principles, of organizing actions. So the first that I wanted to talk about was organizing and acting. I try to say over and over again, we need to be everywhere and we need to be doing it every day. So part of that, as I mentioned, the first step is, okay, what are we going to be saying that we want to do? And how are we going to get people organized around that? I hear people saying, including our elected representatives, it's really hard to get Democrats to agree on anything. But, that's their job. And it's also our job. So we need to press them to get their act together and, help us with that vision. But we also have our role to play in making sure our voices are heard. So that's the first step. The second part of it is agitate and mobilize. So we need to be an opposition party. So what does that look like? We're not in power, so we have to use all the tools that we have available to us. A lot of that, difficulty with Democrats is we don't like to do the uncomfortable things. And sometimes that's what being an opposition party requires. And those are things that can maybe slow or block the actions that are being damaging to us and the rest of the country. And we need to use our positive vision and the actions we're taking in opposition to inspire and to mobilize just regular people who are out there not liking it, but not sure what they can do. So an important part of that, of inspiring and mobilizing people, is we really have to put our vision and our plans, like I focused on real people and enabling real people, individuals like us, the politicians, people who are more engaged in, big level activism, to be able to tell those stories in ways that are relevant to where they are, their geographies, the groups they're with, and also the issues that are important to them. So rather than talking in Washington speak and with, numbers and, all that, we need to be able to translate this into ways that are meaningful to real people. And then lastly, and this is a big point for me, we need to lean into the issues that we're calling out. I firmly believe, for example, that a lot of the issues that Republicans have historically taken as their own are things that our values put us in a better position to address them and to own them. And so we need to have that confidence that we believe we're doing the right things and that we can talk to people and demonstrate to them why these are the right things and how they can help them. So that's that first tenet. The second is we need to think about who it is we want to talk to. So that would be our target audience. None of us is going to be able to talk to all of these people. We don't have them in our lives, or they're not important to us, whatever it is. But as Cecilia was talking about earlier, through collective action, through a strategy, and through working together, we can address and we can influence all of these different audiences and mobilize them to action. So, first, and this was kind of where I started from, because I actually do work with some of my elected representatives, to put a position forward and really push them to have a voice, a coherent voice, and to take action. And so when we think about it, we need to think about it at not just the national level, but at the national, the state, and the local level, because we need to ask our leaders at all levels to be bold and be everywhere every day. So that's one audience. Some of these next audiences, and even the electeds, may not be friendly to the messages that we're putting out there. They may even be hostile, or they're busy with their lives and they don't really engage. So, it's important for us to think about what's important to them. How might they respond to what we're talking about? And to frame the actions that we're going to propose in ways that are meaningful to the audience we're talking to. And we'll get to an example, a couple of examples in that last column. So, think about that as we're going into the breakout room. Think about your audience and, put yourself in their position, and, you need to target the action and the communication to them. The last one is tactics, and that's really what the breakout sessions are all about. What we'd like for you to think about, as I was saying, what audience are you going to be talking about? What are your spheres of influence? Which groups? Activists, community or business, church, book groups? Are you really good at social media? Are you going to go out canvassing and door to door talking to people? So think about what that audience is. And then with that frame, think about what are the actions that you can take to influence those folks, to mobilize them, and to get them to help us in moving that vision forward and to oppose what's going on right now. So in the action column, you'll see we picked out 2 examples just to get your thoughts going. So let's combine elected officials with the agitate and mobilize tenet. So we can we can ask them to do trackers of how many hospitals are closing in rural areas, how many people are being thrown off Medicaid. We can also go to town hall meetings and talk about the things that are happening in our regions, in our communities, about those types of issues. So they want to hear from us how it's affecting us, so we can do our own tracking and talk about how it's impacting people in terms of getting drugs that they need or care that they need, or those sorts of issues. A second would be to localize and personalize the discussion, the argument. So let's take the example of faith groups. So there, we may want to frame some of these issues, and you'll notice that some of the pillars really open themselves up to this in terms of moral values. Love thy neighbor, care for the least among us, and talk to those faith groups about the policy issues in ways that it affects people that we should be caring about and not leaving them behind. So those are 2 ways to kind of frame the conversation based on the audiences that you're trying to reach. So if you want to go to the next. So this next slide is just some ideas that we came up with just to kind of, again, get your minds going. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I'll call out a couple. So, I think one thing is recruiting people with shared interests. Something that is 2 things that are going to be barriers is this idea of what happens if we don't or they don't agree with everything. So, we need to not put a litmus test out there, and we need to say, what are the issues that are important to you that we agree on? But then the second thing is, what are we going to ask them to do? And some people are going to be all in and say, give me a job, give me a task. Others are going to want to be helpful, but not take a big action. So, maybe one is write some postcards. Another is, take ownership of one of the 4 core beliefs that Rebecca was talking about earlier. So, tailor it based on how much of the audience you're talking to. Agitate and mobilize. One thing that can be really important is to think about in a particular area, what kind of rapid response activity can we set up to, here in Illinois, a great example is we've got potentially National Guard and ICE and all those folks coming. What can we do to set up some kind of a rapid response to mobilize people to talk about where activity is happening and do warnings and also support people who are being grabbed up. The next, localize and personalize. There it may be social media. If you're really good at using social media, tie the issues that you're concerned about to specific people and your community, so that it's not just a big picture issue. It's something that's real to the people that are following you and that you're going to be influencing. And then lastly, lean in. I'll speak for myself. I can be wary of speaking out in settings because I don't want to prompt a disagreement, and I don't want to have some sort of a MAGA backlash. But I find in my life that MAGA folks aren't shy about, proclaiming they are, and also, staking out positions. And, maybe we just need to, on issues that are important and have to be comfortable, standing up for them. So those are some examples. And then the next, this is something that I did. And again, this was targeted to my elected officials. And I'm actually going to be seeing a number of them at an event that I'm going to next week. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but at a high level, we need them to rally both folks in Washington and in local groups around a common vision and a coordinated plan. We need to get them to act because we're stronger together. And if we don't take that primary action, we're going to be weaker no matter what the plan is for these other areas. So that's another thing. Another is a vision for America, like the, you know what I'm talking about, the 2025 document from Heritage.
Project.
We can't,
Yeah.
Project, 2025. We can't do that. But we collectively need to have that. And so we need to push them to say, we got our vision, we've got things we want to do. Now work out the detailed plan of how we make things happen. So again, not something that we can do, but something we can push them to do. Agitate and mobilize. This is a big one. We've been going, or they have been going along with too many things, business as usual. And, I've been saying you need to block the things that they're doing. We need to be an opposition government, so put people in roles to take the point on foreign affairs and defense issues and all that stuff. Not just have lots of people talking about lots of things and get that lost in the noise. Try to work on an action playbook that you can be asking us to do that can be more helpful because you have knowledge that we don't. I talked about in Lean In owning the issues. And then localize and personalize, another big issue. When I hear almost every single one of the folks in Washington talk, it's like, Charlie Brown. And they talk about what's going on in Washington and they may even say, we have this vision, but they don't even talk about what the points of the vision are. We need to press them, as was said earlier, about the people, I think by Chris, people running for office. There are some really great communicators out there. And, if you're speaking to a camera, you need to be talking to real people. So those are some of the main things that I have put out for them. So, that's an example for a particular targeted audience. And as you go into the breakout groups, think about it for the audiences that you select. Okay, next. So I just want to focus on the right-hand side here. So when we ask you to go into the breakout room, we're going to have 25 minutes. First thing to do is select the scribe. And that person is tasked with not doing a verbatim transcript and not, saying this person said that and that person said that, but to get down the ideas, the main thrust of the ideas that people are throwing out there. That person will also be the person who kind of does a readout when we all get back together after the breakout groups. So, select or have someone volunteer to be a scribe. The next thing is when you go into the rooms, what we want you to do is kind of think about your own position. Who are the people you're going to be talking to? What are the spheres of influence that you're engaged with just in your everyday life? And then think about, okay, what can I do in those settings to communicate where we want we need to start with from a positive position and statement. How do I communicate to them in ways that are meaningful what we want to do? And that's why we are concerned with what's going on. And then what kind of actions can I take to influence people? And what kind of actions can I ask them to take to further the mission that we're trying to accomplish? So it's think about who you are and where you interact with people. Think about how you can talk to them about the issues that are important to you. And then lastly, what can you do and what can they do to move things forward? With that, I'm going to turn it over back to Rebecca, and she's going to set up the breakout rooms. And we'll see you in those individually, and then we'll see you back here.
Yep. And just before I launch the breakout rooms, just a couple of ground rules. I was multitasking, so if Joe said this, apologies.
I did not.
Okay. So a couple of ground rules, just because these breakout rooms, we've got quite a large audience here tonight, which is really exciting. And so we're going to have 5 breakout rooms, which means about 20 people in each room. So that's a lot of people. And we've got 25 minutes. So each person is going to have probably 1 or 2 minutes. So try and keep it tight so that everybody who wants to speak can get a turn. So just to reiterate, the assignment is 25 minutes together. Select a note taker who's going to capture all the ideas and share out those ideas after we all come back together. And then the discussion happens, and the discussion should be around how do you combine or customize these strategic principles that Joe walked us through, depending on the audience that you're thinking about. And it can be different for each person. So, Rebecca, I may say, oh, I want to go talk to my book club. How am I going to organize or, get my book club to lean in? Whereas somebody else might say, I'm going to go talk to my local school board about a certain issue. And somebody else may want to go talk to their church group. Like, we all have our spheres of influence. So we're going to have a ton of different strategy ideas. And that is wonderful. And we want to collect those all. So make sure that as you're coming up with these ideas, you voice them and get them captured. The way I'm thinking about it is let 1,000 flowers bloom. Let's try everything. And that's the assignment. So with that, I'm going to send everybody to the breakout rooms, and then I'm going to send the facilitators into the breakout rooms separately. So Here we go. Okay. So Adrian is going to room number 1. Cecilia is going to room 2. Dr. Chris is going to room 3. Joe is going to room 4. Melissa is going to room 5. There you go.
Okay, that was fun. But I do have to go, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I was on mute. I said bye, Cecilia, and thank you.
Okay, we should get people coming back in now. And I believe when we have everybody back, that Dr. Melissa is going to be facilitating our debrief. See if I can find her.
Is she back from a breakout room?
Um, I don't see her and I don't hear her.
You think she dropped off?
It shows that she's still, oh, there she is. There's Melissa. You're on mute. Okay.
There we go. I was time traveling back, going through the ether. It took a while to get back. It was just this a little arrow, time travel. So anyway, I think I'm moderating. So I got to switch gears here. So, okay, thank you everyone for doing this. And we will start with a different group. Shall we get the feedback from group number 1? And that was, whose group was number 1?
Can we skip to the next group just for a minute?
Yes, we absolutely can. Group number 2. Going once, going twice. Number 2. And that was whose group?
I'm going alphabetically. I think that was Cecilia's group.
Okay, Cecilia, who was the scribe for Cecilia's group? Are they here? Is everybody here now?
So Cecilia had to leave. I'm not sure if someone was the scribe for her group that can share.
Anyone? Well, I'm going to skip to ours because I know it was Lillian. So number 5 is my group. And let's go ahead. Lillian, can you tell us what you have and I'll pipe in.
Yes, you'll need to pipe in, I think, Dr. Melissa. Well, we had quite an interesting group. We were talking about our target audience. Dr. Melissa said she has an open mic group and she's doing localize and personalize, and it's on Substack. Jolene said that she has an interesting meeting, Old Gray Mayors meeting, and that's in Kansas, and that's where she raises awareness, leans in, and it's community and business. I have my virtual groups, individuals, personal friends, postcards, current events, poetry groups, and always try to bring in something amongst those groups. So that would be personalized, I suppose. Lean in, maybe. And then Wayne has MAGA Republican friends. So he's working on leaning in, and he recommended some books that we need to read, which we consider that to be lean in too. Did we consider that to be community, Dr. Melissa?
I think that was lean in, but that wasn't on the list,
so.
but it's a great one. It's sort of like bibliotherapy in the therapy field. So having people and recommending books seems like right in on the lean in side, I would think.
Then we had David. He's involved in a networking group, and he does everyday issues and talks to these various Republicans, not about specifics, not about how terrible Trump is, but he personalizes it. And he said, we don't call Trump, he doesn't call Trump an authoritarian, but that's localized and personalized, we decided. Kathy has messaging on her pickup truck, and she has messages from the Pope. She has patience with people, localize and personalize, organize and act every day, community gardens, agitate and mobilize. So Kathy had a lot of things going on there. Targets. Maria has a senior community. She organizes and acts, leans in, does small groups, and hopes to get into a larger group. And finally, who is this? Sarah?
Maria?
Maria was
Oh, after that. Okay, so Sarah. Okay.
Yeah, Facebook, social media, and lean in. So that's our group.
Yeah. And what we also talked about, there could be progression of one strategy to getting big, like from a small group to bigger and bigger. So that was a lot of good ideas. And then how to switch gears between the different methods so you don't get stuck in one method. All right, let's see. How about group 4? Who had group 4?
Looks like we have some hands up.
Oh, okay. A scribe somewhere. Oh yeah, Daryl.
Yes, I couldn't figure out how to unmute myself in my group. So,
Sorry. Oh no, you might have been in my group. I don't know. Sorry.
no, I was in the gentleman's group. I can't remember what his name was right off the top of my head.
That was
Anyway,
Joe.
Mr.
Yeah.
Joe.
okay. Yeah. Anyway, one of my questions was, how do we get the local TVs and radio stations to cover our demonstrations, like the street side marches and so forth, and banners and that kind of thing? I don't want to get arrested just to get the publicity, but I would like to find some way of, is there a letter writing campaign to these TV stations or anything we can do to try to get them to cover us when we're doing these
Call them.
demonstrations?
Call them.
That just keep calling them, okay?
Thank you.
But there's
And
no
get
other.
other people. Actually, that's a great thing you could do to organize. Ask other people in the group to call your TV and radio stations.
Okay.
They hear from
That's
enough
sort of
people,
social.
they'll do
That's
it.
media and messaging kind of deal.
This is Joel. We do that in another group here, and we have a contact at the Janesville Gazette, and she is a strong supporter besides. And what we do is you got to schedule it ahead. You got to give them a timeline when you're going to do it, and then kind of give them a little idea what you're planning. And more than anything, they'll probably show up. Like we just had a Labor Day celebration, and we had people taking photos and that, and we submitted to this lady, and waiting to see if it gets in the Gazette. And she did our May Day. We had a May Day program, and she was there, and we had a beautiful article in the Janesville Gazette. So you got to find like a contact and give them heads up ahead of time, because they have to talk to their people at the paper too.
You have to develop them over time. You get to know somebody.
It takes time.
It does. How about Jim? What are you a scribe? And if you're not, even so, what would you like to say?
So yeah, I was group 2, and I just want to talk a little bit about Cecilia. Started off, she talked about how on Labor Day she went to an event trying to collect signatures for somebody that was running against Mary Miller. And she saw a group of Hispanics that had kind of separated themselves from the rest of the group. She went over and talked to them and made some inroads with that group, just because she went over there and tried to do, try to make contact. And that's what, so I kind of talked about what you just have to be aware of, where situations may present themselves that you can take advantage of. The example I used is, I talked about it this morning on the Coffee and Conversation. I went to my school board meeting last night to talk about a new gun bill that Illinois has signed into law. After the school board meeting, I got a call from one of the school board members, and she said, "Jim, thank you for doing that, but I am really concerned about one of the schools that has a high Hispanic population." what can we do about it? And I said, well, have you heard about red cards? She said, no. So I brought that up on the Coffee and Conversation this morning. I got a link at the Coffee and Conversation where I can order 250 red cards. So I've done that. And we had a couple other people just talk about general things that they could different groups that they could target. We had one lady that she works in her family has a dental practice that she said we have a high percentage of Hispanics that come in. And so they can distribute the red cards there. So like I said, you never know where these opportunities are going to come from. So you just got
That's
to be
pretty
aware.
much that first one, right? Like everything everywhere all at once, kind of.
Yeah. Yep.
Be aware. How about Jolene? Oh, you have to unmute, sorry.
There. I wanted to clarify. I think I was talking too fast. I am an ex-mayor of Lawrence, Kansas. My group is all the ex-mayors of Lawrence, Kansas. I have the opportunity to shape the thinking and the politics of the new group of city commissioners coming in. So my opportunity is to affect local city government, which includes business, but it includes a whole lot more. Thank you.
And I think we said it was sort of a lean-in strategy that you voice your opinions and you voice your concerns, and that influences them. Great. How about Zoe?
Yeah, I was the scribe for group 4. I kind of wrote a lot of ideas
Wow,
down.
great. Okay.
So I'm gonna try to sort through everything. I didn't write the names of the people who like said stuff because I just
Good,
kinda
that's
think of this.
fine. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I kind of first wanted to, I guess like what people were saying, definitely added on to what we were discussing. We first try to choose 2 topics that could help us start to think of ideas. So affordable healthcare and making higher education more affordable. One of the ladies in the group, um, she's like in her, she's about to retire, or she said she was about to retire, or she was in that stage. So she had already gone through school and she knew people that were, in school that were talking about how expensive it is. So, anyways, we talked about, and my dad would always tell me this whenever I wanted to get an issue across or whatever, but to be a squeaky wheel. I think that's the biggest thing, is to be a squeaky wheel, like be really annoying and just every single day calling helps. I mentioned like writing a letter because I wrote a letter to Tammy Duckworth like a few weeks ago and it took her a few weeks to respond. It was a great response, but you can't also really tell if it's automated or if it was with their assistant. So we talked about writing letters and sending them in the mail because real life paper, physical paper is harder to ignore than an email. That can just, you can just leave it on red and you forget about it. Um, and I know we were discussing like how when it comes to affordable higher education, I could speak to my fellow students and get all of us as a group because it's always more effective when it's not just one person, obviously, but to talk to like student life, like this, the group SGA is what it's called here, and they're in charge of all the money that goes to all the student orgs at my university. So I think, that's a really trusted organization that the university is in contact with. So that'd be a great place to start. But I think starting small is better, that we agreed on, because um, sometimes when you start really high up, it can get lost in the mix, especially unless you have connections, which I think is also a huge thing, is to make connections, because you also never know who you can meet that can help you. Like when I brought up higher education, the lady who had friends who went to school, she was like, well, maybe I could contact somebody to help you start that in your university. And I think the biggest thing, I know Daryl was asking like how he would get that, and calling also is good, but because social media is such a big thing, every news company, everything has a social media now, a TikTok and Instagram, everything. I think even if we post when we're there or we post messages on social media, which I could probably, do that because I know all about that, and then tag them. Because a lot of times when you tag them, they can't ignore that either. So, but yeah, we just said to, especially when we're writing letters, to call to action, like don't just have it be general, but have a specific theme and kind of add some ethos in there, like kind of add some emotion. I think people pay more attention when they can connect to it or when there's a little bit of sympathy in there. And one of the ladies in my group, I'm almost done, sorry, she talked about how she went to concerts. Like when she went to concerts, that was like the best place to kind of hold a little like voter registration drive because people can't avoid you if you're there. And she's going to 3 more in the next few months. So she's going to keep doing that. But, and then one last thing about higher education, which I thought was a really good idea, was just to, I'm going to try to generalize it after I give the example, but she was talking about how a few of her colleagues went to school in Europe. They went to grad school in Europe. And when she heard their story, she felt like she got scammed. So maybe like kind of posting or showing how different it is financially in another country and kind of showing the numbers or statistics that can kind of make American education like force them to be held accountable, because if there's other countries that can do it cheaper and people are still just as successful, then they have people to answer to now. So yeah, just build a story in your letters, invite a conversation, and write exactly what you expect. I feel like it's easy to listen when you have your intentions clear. And last thing is that one of the ladies in the group, she was at, it's like Red Wine and Blue, she said. It's an app, and inside the app, there's like a thing called Rally, which is kind of where she posts everything and informs people on voting and everything like that. So I'll type it in the chat, but that's what we had. So
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
How about Tim? Tim. Yeah. Have to unmute. Yeah. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. And thank you, Zoe, by the way. Okay,
Okay.
thank you, Tim. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So Cecilia was our scribe, and I heard her leave. So I guess we'll go between what Jim had brought up earlier, and one of the things that we had talked about is having these meetings that 1 Million Rising is suggesting. If we maybe 10 people could be at home, it could be out at a library, but I have brought up the issue that I ran into while attempting to influence a friend of mine who we've so far managed to be able to talk about politics and still remain friends. But what came up was in social media, the amount of, okay, what's the correct word? It's not misinformation. Jim pointed out it's
Disinformation.
Disinformation.
Yeah.
Disinformation.
With the D. Okay.
Yeah.
And there's so much of it out there that years ago we used to have a kind of agreed upon way of everyone knew actually what the facts was, like the sky is blue most days anyway, and things like that. But that's not the case anymore with so much disinformation on social media and other platforms. So I always prepare myself and always end up pretty much when discussing something, if I don't have like a whole bunch of facts with me, that it comes down to where do you get your information, and that usually is news sources. And so there is really little gained if you have real life experience and then the news sources that you watch. So there was a couple things brought up. It was by Cecilia, and she brought up 2 groups called Truth Brigade, I believe, if I heard her correctly, and Braver Angels. And you would be able to have the facts with you when you I don't know if you can bring that up online on your phone. Anyway, that's that plus a lady talked about having her group in her condo association, and they would have a little gazebo out there and they'd have get-togethers and talk about that. That's all I remember.
Yeah, and I have to say for our group too, we had someone, two people were in their living situations, and one was assisted living, one was a, I think another living place, and that was a place to kind of build some group cohesion around these ideas. Thank you very much, Tim. Daryl, you have your hand up. Did you want to say something else? I don't know if Daryl,
Yeah,
thank you, Tim.
I
Yeah.
had a couple of questions. We had an empty chair town hall and invited Josh Holly, Doug Under, and somebody else. Anyway, of course, they didn't attend, but we had a candidate who's running against Doug Under. And she attended, and she listened as much as she talked, and that was encouraging. And that was one thing we did up in St. Petersburg near St. Louis. And another thing, the red card thing, I didn't catch what that's all about. I listened to it, but I wasn't sure what that's all about.
Okay, the red cards are cards you can buy, or you can also make them yourself. They might not be red if you do that, but they give all the information for people who are immigrants who might be at risk as far as ICE collecting. And so they're informational, and they're English on one side and another language on the other. It could be Spanish, could be Portuguese for Brazilians. It could be Sanskrit, like what's the for people who are Eritrean or Ethiopian.
Amharic.
Thank you very much.
It's a Semitic language.
Yes, and so there's a variety. So you can get those and you can distribute them. Sometimes you can do it in a hospital setting, restaurants, certainly places that there are any work sites, Home Depot, whatever, where there may be people who might be interested. And that's the red card.
And
Melissa,
one other thing.
I just posted the link where people can order red cards for free.
Oh, good. You just a link in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's see. Thank you, Daryl. Kathy, I just want to get.
I had one other thing, if I can slide in here.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I made some signs that say "No ice trespassing," and I'm trying to give them to businesses to put in their front window.
Are they cooperating?
I'm sorry?
Are they cooperative? Are they interested?
Not yet. I've just got signs made, and I'm going to be going out this weekend and trying to get the businesses to put them in their front window.
Where are you? I'm just curious. Where are you doing that?
It's in Fenton, Missouri.
Okay.
And we're going to like restaurants and places like that where some immigrants might be working.
Sure.
It's a great idea. And I think if you can keep us informed about how that works, that would be fantastic. I mean, like even
ICE may not pay attention, but at least it shows people that are walking in how that business owner feels about it.
Yep.
It absolutely does. It's publicizing it. How about Kathy?
I just and I may have missed it. Did you get to group 1?
We missed group 1 because were you a scribe for group 1?
I'm a scribe.
Adrian is. We had to go back to Adrian. Yes, Adrian. That was your group. Who was your scribe?
That was me.
Oh, double duty.
Yeah. So one of our people is heavily, I don't want to out anybody just in case they want to keep anonymity, but one of our people is heavily involved in social media. She's found common cause with some neighbors or friends, I'm not really sure, that are anti-corporation. So those are ins that she has, sort of talking points. She is suggesting to someone that she knows who is kind of prepping and doing the solitary preparation thing that, group action might be more powerful. She's very concerned in immigration with a human rights focus. So I think she's hoping to have an in that way, talk to some immigration organizing groups. One of our people is a former realtor, and one of the things that I liked that she brought up in specific was that they suggested you carry a sold sign around with you, which immediately draws people to a talking point. an outward sign that you believe what you believe, I assume. Sort of marketing all the time, basically. So she said that she has a couple of t-shirts. A couple of quotes that she gave are that fascism never ends well. Yeah. Sorry, I neglected to get the other one.
That's okay. Yeah.
And then one of our people was really concerned, another one about immigration rights. And I hope that she can make some connections that way. She's also interested in figuring out along those lines, in case anybody wants to respond, that she's wondering how local police are dealing with things. And that brings me to the last person who said that she was involved in her city's politics, and she shifted a red town blue, and she did it through organizing through libraries, disseminating clear and understandable information. And they used a strategy of having community meetings, as many people as who were willing to attend, and then also canvassing. And she said over 25 years that shift occurred. So that's pretty powerful. And to be honest, we didn't focus on pinpointing which of the tactics we were specifically using. And it sounds like people are constantly shifting between tactics. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we get to Chris's group. I think we got to your group yet, did we, Chris?
No, I did put a summary in the chat, so I can just I'll fly through it really quick because I know we had so many great ideas. We have someone that works in a prison and does adult education in the prison, and already has some sessions set up where they're going to talk about empathy and ethics, and then try and weave in some of the things that are happening right now in our world. And of course, prison systems are impacted already with staff being cut. Another person has a business networking, but also works with a PTA group that was somewhat defunct, but she plans to pull them all together and kind of work towards activism. Another member has already contacted, just like Joe is working with her representatives, but also plans to write a Substack article and then get really heavily involved in Blue Sky. We have Ari in our group mentioned that we need to have different approaches for different groups, and specifically talked about marginalized groups in the area of Chicago that she's from, and especially young Black men who are feeling kind of left behind. And this was kind of eye-opening to think about that we have some areas even in Chicago that where internet isn't accessible to people. So when you're thinking about pushing things out through social media and other means, it wouldn't be reachable for the youth and the people in some of these communities. She also is working with her church, a Lutheran church, to also on advocacy. We had someone that was a healthcare person who worked and was worked across 20 different counties, so had great reach. And we talked about, obviously the huge impact on healthcare, and then using stories as a way of communicating. And we talked about that, like in our sharing our stories group, about how to communicate the impact of some of these harmful policies. Laura in our group has a website, kind of a resistance website, and is reaching out to people that, like her, are more isolated, and don't necessarily have the networks or formal groups that they're part of. And then Jennifer in our group has a young daughter, or has a daughter who's just graduating, so plans to work through and with her daughter to get young people involved, college age people, through her daughter's college. And then Marty in our group, this was really interesting. So George Mason fell under some of the same attacks as Harvard did because of their DEI. And he and other alumni have mobilized and they are pushing back, and even to the point where they tried to replace the board of directors, and they were able to successfully make sure that that didn't happen. So, and I can't remember the initiative, Marty. What is it called? Like, help me out here.
Stand with Mason.
Stand with Mason.
That's the
Okay,
group.
yeah. Awesome. Yeah, that great work. But we have our summary in there, and yeah, that was pretty much that was, what were we, group 2 or 3? I think we were 3. Thanks,
I don't
everyone.
remember the numbers either. Only Rebecca knows.
Only
She's not
Rebecca
telling
knows.
us.
And speaking of Rebecca, Rebecca has to go put a child to bed in 10 minutes. So we should
Okay.
probably go through the last 2 people with their hands up and then wrap it up pretty quickly here. So
Yes, if we didn't get to everyone's group, I apologize. It was hard to get everyone in, and you can put everything in the chat, please. But it was really productive. How about Richard?
Well, yeah, my group is great, and also I have to leave soon because I gotta call my girlfriend. So
Okay, well, say hello to her from us.
I will.
Okay. Was there any last group, last minute, like someone who was a scribe but didn't speak yet? Scribes, calling all scribes. All right. Everyone did a great job. And Rebecca?
yeah, thanks everybody. I think Chris is gonna round us out.
Yeah, so we're just going to quickly wrap up and really talk about what the next step is. So we just finished our strategy session. Next session, we will transition to messaging. We made to have a couple of sessions on messaging. We have 3 of our colleagues, Mindy, James, and John. Mindy has some background in messaging using the same approach that Indivisible National uses. And then James Schwarty uses the 3 laws of performance, and John Baker is our member who has a background in labor and has actually worked with candidates and folks on messaging. So the next steps for you are to join us on Discord. If you aren't already on there, we will have these documents posted on Discord, and you'll have the opportunity to provide feedback and input to some of that working framework that Joe talked us through. We do have a couple recommendations on videos that are also on the mentioned here. So Indivisible National has a campaign on messaging. So, and then you heard I guess Cecilia brought up in her group the Indivisible Truth Brigade. So those are both good resources. And because Rebecca now has a child that needs to get tucked in, I'll turn it back over to Rebecca, who will close us out.
Yes, so in closing, we just want to say thank you for everybody who showed up tonight. We had a wonderful crew, and you all make the difference. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. Like, I think we had 2,000 flowers tonight. So together, we are building this vision, and it doesn't just push back on what we oppose, but it's really bringing forward the country that we want to live in. And we all know change is never easy, and we are up against some very real forces, but we are strong and we are many. As John Lewis reminds us, democracy is not a state, it's an act. So, like, it's a verb, not a noun. So each time we gather, each time we speak out, we are doing that work. And so we're going to do our next session in 2 weeks. As Chris mentioned, that's going to be on messaging. And I look forward to seeing all of you then. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
And Sarah, this is for you.
night.
Charlotte says hi.
Yay.
I saw your message. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
It's great.
And Laura, if you saw my message in the chat, somebody wanted to know the name of your website. So if you could throw that in the chat, that would be great. And I'll just hang on to save everything.